Coming up.
That deputy ministers across different departments have suspended public servants who worked on ArriveCAN that are not agreeing with their narrative?
And that is
March the 20th, you appeared at committee and you and Minister Anand announced to Canadians that collectively you discovered through a mix of tips and advanced data analytics 3 subcontractors who were engaged in fraudulent billing over 36 separate government departments, totaling close to $5 million. All 3 had been referred to the RCMP. Have the RCMP confirmed that those 3 individuals have been criminally charged? Yes or no?
Do you think that the government should be contracting out to firms who use the GC Strategies model?
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
And Minister Duclos, under this Prime Minister and this Liberal government, and more specifically yourself as the former president of the Treasury Board and now the Minister for Public Services and Procurement, we have seen an increase in wasteful spending and corruption, in the number of billions of dollars and dozens of investigations, including the RCMP. In fact, your own departmental plan has noted fraud and other wrongdoing remains a key risk for your department. How much more contracting fraud has been discovered in your department?
You are noting quite well that this department is key to making the lives of Canadians better and more affordable. That is a focus of this department, PSPC and shared services. As we do that, as you also note, we need to make sure that the process and the processes are rigorous. And if there were to be fraud and wrongdoing, that it would be first identified and then punished in the proper way.
Thank you. Has the RCMP interviewed any government officials in your department?
Well, you need to ask the RCMP for reliable information. Obviously, the RCMP doesn't respond to political interference and pressure. So the right people to ask the question would be to ask the RCMP.
But you are aware of the investigations that have been undertaken by the RCMP, is that correct?
We are all aware of such investigations, and we obviously fully support whatever RCMP efforts need to be supported, and we are there to help their difficult job.
In your opening remarks, you mentioned the creation of a new office to address supplier misconduct. What about misconduct within your own department?
Et c'est une excellente question, et si je peux résumer rapidement.
That's an excellent question. This new office is going to extend the volume of offenses or issues that will be dealt with. For example, corruption, the funding of terrorism, human trafficking, electoral violations, and they will be dealt with even better than in the past.
Specifically about issues within your own department.
So it is indeed an office that will be able to look into the department's activities, but also beyond, and also in collaboration with other governments and other countries, which is something that is not possible at this time.
Thank you. Are you aware that deputy ministers across different departments have suspended public servants who worked on ArriveCAN that are not agreeing with their narrative?
And that is an important question to ask to those departments, ministers, and deputy ministers, as we all follow the news. We are indeed aware of such events.
Is there any responsibility on the part of your office to weigh in on these matters or to pay particular attention to what is happening across the public service?
All departments, all ministers, all deputy ministers have the same obligation that if there is misconduct to be found within their public service, they are obligated, and we expect them to do that, obligated to look into the matters and to punish in whatever appropriate way that ill behavior.
Thank you. We have seen Canada Post running higher deficits year after year as they struggle to make strategic changes to address the changes in the market. Yet Canada Post has not had its corporate plan approved since 2019, prior to the pandemic. What has kept your government from approving a new corporate plan for Canada Post?
Canada Post has the responsibility, and it's a difficult one, to deliver services across our country. Its purpose is a service-first purpose. It needs to be fairly treating all Canadians, regardless of where they live, in remote and rural areas in particular, something which other organizations and private corporations in particular sometimes are unwilling or unable to do. And we understand that the demand for mail has been falling over the last 20 years, falling by approximately 50%. They also serve more addresses, about 3 million more addresses in the last 20 years. So that is putting pressure, financial pressure on them. And we're obviously working with them to make sure that they keep meeting their heavy responsibilities while doing this in a financially sustainable manner.
It has also been reported many times that the government is looking to move on from the Phoenix pay system and that trials are being run at certain departments with the new system, NextGen, I believe. Would you be able to provide this committee with the names of the companies who bid on the contracts for the new system, how they were ranked, and which departments they are currently running trials in?
So let me proceed in quick two phases. First, the objective of all of that, which is precisely and obviously the objective of serving public servants, paying them on time and accurately as they serve Canadians through their jobs. As we do that, we also need to consider the next path, which is, as you noted, NextGen.
Minister, I appreciate the objective. I think we're all aware of what you're trying to accomplish by moving to a new system, but I'm asking if you would provide me with the names of the companies who bid on the contracts for the new pay system, how they were ranked, and which departments they are currently running trials in.
We will do that with great pleasure.
Minister, we are out of time. Perhaps you can provide that in writing to the committee.
Shift to the issue of Canada Post. And of course, since your last visit to committee, we've seen the annual report from Canada Post and the fact that the corporation has lost over $750 million. I believe that's the greatest deficit in the corporation's history. And at the same time, we see in rural Canada some real challenges around the loss of rural post offices. You and I have spoken about this. This is affecting communities right across the country. Now, every year, you provide a letter of expectation as minister to the head of Canada Post, which is an arm's length Crown corporation. In those letters of expectation, has the minister responsible ever expressed specific concern about the closure of rural post offices in this country?
So since you spoke about the things we are doing for Canadians, since 2021, we've put into place universal daycare in Canada.
No, but Minister, it's a serious question. It's a very specific question about the letter of expectation. I don't want to hear an answer about chapter.
And I know you, Taylor. I know how good and focused
serious I am
and
about
engaged
this. Yes.
you are. So it is not as if we haven't done anything since 2021.
No, I didn't say that in my question.
Cases, you were supporting or even leading on some of these files. So I want to acknowledge that, Taylor, because
I appreciate it.
You're a progressive, you're an engaged and credible person. Now, on post offices and the rural moratorium in particular.
It's the letter of expectation specifically.
And the letter of expectations. Yes, every year there is a letter of expectations that states not only the expectations, but the objectives which we believe Canada Post should be striving for. Now, we understand that Canada Post is independent and sometimes need to, as we discussed last time, to adjust to situations that either were not predictable or that just were not controllable, such as retirement and deaths and fires and all of these things that sometimes occur and make it difficult for Canada Post to maintain rural post offices in particular. But that's not only the expectation that we are setting for them, but also the
Mr. Chair, can I? I know my time is running out. It's probably
Your time
run
is
out.
out.
Can I just finish with a couple of words, which is that since your government put a moratorium in place in 1994, we've lost over 500 rural post offices. And my question was a very specific one, and I'm disappointed that you did not provide a clear answer.
Minister, over 2 months ago, March the 20th, you appeared at committee and you and Minister Anon announced to Canadians that collectively you discovered through a mix of tips and advanced data analytics 3 subcontractors who were engaged in fraudulent billing over 36 separate government departments, totaling close to $5 million. All 3 had been referred to the RCMP. Ms. Reza, during one of her last appearances, actually gave us the names of those 3 subcontractors. They weren't companies per se, but rather individuals. So my question to you is, I know there's been an ongoing dialogue between yourself, sir, your department, and the RCMP. Have the RCMP confirmed that those 3 individuals have been criminally charged? Yes or no?
Well, we need to distinguish 2 things. First, the work of my department, and second, the work of the RCMP. As you noted and summarized quite well, on March the 20th, it was made public that there were investigations.
That's fine. Has the RCMP confirmed with you or a member of your department that the 3 referrals have resulted in criminal charges? Yes or no?
So as I was going to say, as for what pertains to the RCMP, it's for the RCMP to answer.
So you don't know the answer?
So I wouldn't be able to speak credibly on behalf of the RCMP.
You indicated back then this was only the first wave of what you expected to be a series of discoveries. You indicated at that time there were 5 to 10 further cases being examined. Of those 5 to 10, have there been referrals made to the RCMP?
And that is because, as you noted, on March the 20th, there was also another piece of good news, which is the creation
I don't care about the good news, sir. Of the 5 to 10 that you identified over 2 months ago, have any of those companies been referred to the RCMP? Yes or no, sir?
As I've said, RCMP matters are RCMP matters.
This is a decision you or your ministry would make to the RCMP. The RCMP on their own don't initiate the investigation based on your internal review. They rely upon your referral. Again, for the 3rd time, sir, of the 5 to 10 cases, have any of those been referred to the RCMP?
So, again, the March 20th announcement was important. You listened to it carefully, obviously, and you understood it well. As you also noted, there are investigations on a number of others, the estimate being between 5 and 10. I am not privy to those conversations. My job cannot make me politically involved in that type of work because that would be political interference.
Sir, you indicated that your department had identified 5 to 10 other cases of suspected fraudulent criminal activity. This is not a hard question to answer, sir. Surely the investigation that was started over 2 months ago must be finished by now. So the question is very simple, sir. I'll ask it for the 4th time. Of those 5 to 10 investigations that your department started, has any of those been referred to the RCMP?
When that information is known, it will be made public by the RCMP, presumably,
Can
or
you
by
tell
the
us,
integrity.
sir, with respect, please?
No,
This is not question period,
my-
sir. This is committee. This is where we actually get answers from government officials. The answer, sir, is yes or no. Did you refer, or a member of your department refer any of those 5 to 10 cases to the RCMP?
And the answer, when it comes, and if it comes,
Why
will come
can't you
from
answer the
independent
question?
officers and not political representatives.
Minister, why can't you answer the question?
No. MP Brock, you wouldn't want a politician, including yourself, mingle
Sir, you had
with
no problem
matters
identifying
of integrity
3.
and investigation.
Sir,
that
with
wouldn't be
respect.
appropriate to know
One
this
moment,
really
please.
well.
Both of you have a point of order. I'll stop the clock.
I would appreciate if my colleague, MP Brock, allow the minister to finish. Thank you.
Minister,
Okay, sorry, let me, please. We've brought this up many times. It's not a point of order. We do allow members to have the time. Mr. Brock's been very clear with his questions. I think he and members of the committee deserve a very clear answer. Minister, go ahead. I've restarted Sorry,
I'll
Mr.
ask-
Brock.
I'm gonna ask the question, Chair.
Restarting the clock. Go ahead.
Minister, you had no difficulty, you and Minister Anand had no difficulty identifying 3 subcontractors that you referred to the RCMP. But now you have great difficulty sharing with parliamentarians, sharing with Canadians of the 5 to 10 companies that were under review 2.5 months ago, whether any of them were referred to the RCMP. What are you hiding?
And that's because the independent officers in my department do their job with no political interference. When I am aware, when I will become aware at some point, I suppose, of the results of these investigations, we will be able to share those results.
And I'm wondering if you could lay out how the process for divesting of public properties is going to prioritize community uses, especially housing. How has since your government has brought forward this strategy for creating affordable housing, how have you changed the processes for divestment and development of public lands and properties in order to ensure that it doesn't get sold to simply the highest bidder? I think that's probably clearly articulated enough for you to provide some kind of answer.
Yeah, it's very well articulated. And we call that the triple P. So it's the places, the partners, and the purpose. So the places, we first need to have an inventory of them. Fortunately, there is already a partial inventory ready and available. But in the next few months, there will be a lot more available, not only on existing surplus properties, but on properties that could be surplus if we were able to, use office space differently, for instance, or recognize that there are properties that are not used to their full potential. The partners, very important. Now, we need to work with community partners, not-for-profit housing partners, private developers, if they can be, can help speed up, obviously, the construction and perhaps the use of those properties, and most importantly, the purposes for which those properties would be used. So yes, the key purpose is to build affordable homes. These homes have to be affordable for middle class and lower income Canadians. Other purposes, including socio-environmental purposes, as we know, we need to protect the environment. So
I'm afraid I have to cut you off there.
Oh,
We're
sorry.
out of time. We'll have Mr. Dennis, then Mr. Sousa to finish us off.
Thank you, Chair. This committee is reviewing a list of contracts given as part of the Indigenous Procurement Program. Some of these companies do seem to follow the GC Strategies model. That is, they are very small firms based in private homes in Ottawa, not on reserves, but in Ottawa, who advertise a specialty in government contracts management. In other words, they're in the business of simply getting contracts and subcontracting. Do you think that the government should be contracting out to firms who use the GC Strategies model?
That brings us back to the discussion that we had some months ago. And as you know, very important measures have been put in place since that time, including...
I've got 5 minutes, and you're not answering the question. Do you think that government should be contracting out to firms who use who use the GC Strategies model? I'm not talking about ArriveCAN, I'm talking about the model, where a company just receives contracts and subcontracts without actually working on the project. Do you think that the government should contract to companies who use this model?
Well, I think the ArriveCAN model and the GC Strategies model has been well discussed and much investigated by all sorts of groups and committees and organizations, and we have learned important lessons. Those lessons have been shared.
I'll just give you one more chance to answer the question. It's a yes or no question. The record will show whether you answered it or not. Do you think that the Government of Canada should contract to companies who simply receive contracts and subcontract? Should the government contract to companies who use this model?
Well, I've just answered the important fact, as you point out, that so-called model, which you just described, is a model that has been heavily criticized by the Auditor General and other groups, including this particular committee. And obviously, those lessons have been well well understood, and many of those recommendations have already been implemented over the last
Okay, but
few months.
the question still hasn't been answered, but I have to move on. There's a particular problem here if the recipients of all or most of those subcontracts are non-Indigenous. If you have a small, officially Indigenous firm that is simply acting as a broker between the federal government and non-Indigenous business, then they're masking the fact that actually Indigenous peoples, Indigenous businesses are not getting the final business at the end of the day. Is there an expectation or a requirement that some percentage of subcontracts also go to Indigenous firms?
Well, that's exactly what we need to do. We need to make sure that Indigenous businesses have access to the procurement opportunity that other Canadians also have. And that's why...
Right, at the subcontracting level as well?
Not only do we have a target of 5%, but we're moving towards that target, and in some of the departments we have exceeded that target.
Okay, sorry, Minister, it's a specific question. I'd like you to answer it. Is there an expectation at the subcontracting level that some percentage, when a contract goes to an Indigenous business that's acting primarily as a broker, is there an expectation that a certain percentage of the subcontracts go to Indigenous businesses?
There are rules and regulations and expectations and targets.
Okay, so what's that percentage then?
Indigenous businesses have their fair share of procurement
what is the
opportunities.
percentage required at the subcontract level?
So as you note, and as you will know, I suppose the target is 5% of Indigenous businesses having access to procurement contracts. That's a minimum. This is not a
Minister, you're not answering the question. The question is about subcontracts. So if a contract goes to an Indigenous business as part of that 5%, and that Indigenous business then subcontracts to someone else, what percentage of those subcontracts should be Indigenous? Because if 100% of those subcontracts are non-Indigenous, maybe there's a problem there. So of that 5%, for the subcontracts, what percentage must, if any, must be Indigenous?
So that is exactly one of the important things that the department needs to do in collaboration with other departments, because PSPC is not the only department. So
just the number, what
multiple
percentage?
levels, including not only who does a job, but who owns the company, the impact in the communities, where those contracts take place.
Minister, simple question. I'm running out of time. What percentage?
Well, I'm just trying to explain the context.
I'm not looking for an explanation. I'm looking for a number.
And if you like,
and I'm just going to say, Minister, the committee ordered information on subcontracts, and almost none were provided. The information we got from the vast majority of departments is that they're not even tracking. They're not even tracking on subcontracts. A final question. There are over 600 Indigenous nations in this country. Do you think it would be a problem if a single company were getting, say, more than 5% of the total amount allocated for Indigenous procurement?
Brief answer, please, Minister. Very brief.
So there are about 600 communities in Canada, Indigenous communities, about 70 Indigenous First Nations, and we work with all of them to make sure that they have access to the proper services and the proper procurement opportunities.
Chair, the Minister didn't answer the question, so I wonder if it could be posed to him again. Maybe there was a problem in transportation.
We are out of time. Perhaps you can get back to us with a real answer in writing, Minister.
If more is needed, we'll provide more.
What would be too much for a single company?
Mr. Genuis, I'm afraid we have to move on because we do have other ministers.
Not concerned, actually excited about development in my community. Canada Lands owns a property in Port Street in a waterfront. It's meant for mixed use, for development, park, affordable housing. The community is very excited about it. It's been actually rather stagnant for years and years. And the fact that Canada Lands is stepping up through your leadership to try to look at redevelopment of that property, I'm very excited about it. But it's also because in budget 2024, we've announced an overhaul to the mandate of Canada Lands and its ability to take on some more development. And I would ask if you could elaborate and explain some of these reforms regarding Canada Land's mandate.
Thank you, Charles. And I'm so glad, and we're so glad to hear that Canada Land Company is already leading and partnering in your community. As you noted, it's going to be even more doing so in other places across Canada because of not only a renewed, but a much enhanced mandate in budget 2024 with tools that will support indeed your community, such as I mentioned earlier, leasing tools. Now, as opposed to going through what is sometimes too long and too complicated, which is to dispose of properties by selling them to the highest bidder, why don't we lease those properties over a long time to community developers, not-for-profit housing developers, to municipalities, to other groups that will then commit to build affordable homes in the long term, affordability being key, not only in the short term, but also in the longer term. Using that to support the efforts of cooperatives, public housing. So it's in addition to leasing, Canada Lands Company would also have the ability to develop the projects themselves. And I should also add, I was going to forget that in budget 2024, there is a $500 million fund so that the federal government can acquire public lands which are not currently owned by the federal government, could be owned by municipal or provincial governments. We buy those pieces of land and we make them, or buildings, and we make them available to the community through, again, possibly lease agreements with lots of economic and socio-environmental positive outcomes.
And the reforms that are now being made to enhance Canada Lands, can you elaborate a little bit more on how that then extends or promotes affordable housing and promotion of housing throughout the country?
So the key word here is accelerating. Over the last 25 years, Canada Lands has built about 2,400 affordable homes. In the last 8 years, 1,200, so a lot more than in the previous 16 years. And in the next 5 years, it will be more than 5,000 affordable homes that Canada Lands Company will be able to build in partnership with other partners. So it's a lot of ambition, but the good news is that there are means to do that through your leadership and the leadership of other MPs of all political parties in this room and elsewhere. Now we have, as the Prime Minister said today at question period, we have a housing crisis like we had at post-Second World War. We had one when we had the boomers population trying to find homes in the 1960s. We have a crisis that we can solve, and we will be solving it with the partnership of many and the support of the Canada Lands Company.